Allow yourself to get thrown into some wild situations. That's the best advice I got. Don't stay in your comfort zone all the time.
So, welcome to Tape Noise Podcast. This is a Muscle Shoals Storyteller series, and got with me today, real good friend, somebody I deeply admire, Spooner Oldham, Hall of Famer with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Alabama Music Hall of Fame, sideman, songwriter, musician, you name it. You've done it. So, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Grant. Good to be here today. It's a nice sunny day down here at Cypress Moon Studio, Tennessee River, back of my head here. I saw it coming in, driving in, and it's a nice place to be,
Now, you've cut a lot of stuff down here, right?
Well, I haven't recorded a whole lot here. I remember something like Do Right Man, the Dan Penn album I played on here, some keyboards, and not a whole lot of stuff, really. There's other players that played a lot more than I did.
So let's go back in history. You got started in this music thing, just high school bands, and take us back there. And I'm just going to let you go.
Well, yeah, I started as, I guess, a teenager, you'd say, and I played on one of the early hit recordings out of the Shoals area, which was You Better Move On by Arthur Alexander. And David Briggs, my friend, played piano, and I overdubbed organ. That was the first time I'd heard the term overdub, or first time I had overdub to tape machine, and with Rick Hall. And then I remember, I think it was 8th grade, Killen Junior High School. I was walking down the hall one day, and my friend Ronald English, he spoke like, when he would talk, it was like my perception was he would someday be a sports radio announcer, because he loved sports and he had a good radio style voice. So I asked him one day, we were walking down the hallway at school, and on the left side of the building, there was an empty school room with the upright piano in there. And I said to Ronald, do you sing any? He said a little bit. And so we went in there and did our, I had been learning to play mandolin because my dad played mandolin. He showed me a few chords. Even though he was a disabled veteran from World War II, Battle of the Bulge, his right arm and leg were paralyzed from injuries sustained in the service. And one day I got him to show me a few chords, and I practiced because I didn't want to harangue him and worry him too much about, because he couldn't play, but he could hold the mandolin in his left arm and hand and show me the chord. Anyway, so Ronald and I walking down the hall, and can you sing? Do you like to sing? I sing a little. We did our version of A Whole Lot of Shaking Going On, but Jerry Lee Lewis had the hit recording on the radio at that time. And from that, I just transposed whatever information I had on the mandolin to the piano best I could. And so, that's pretty good. First effort, Ronald. Maybe we should start practicing. So we went over, my cousin, got Bruce Oldham involved. He had a nice, pretty white Telecaster guitar, Fender Stratocaster. And we could come to his house and practice a certain night a week. I forgot what night it was. So there's me and Ronald and Bruce. And we just learned and cover songs and hit songs that were on the radio, because we weren't writing back. It was too early for me to write songs. And we practiced and learned a few songs. And then one day, we were going to have a band. We're going to need a drummer. And so Roger Hawkins, I think he was like 14, he started playing drums with us. And of course, at that time, I was probably 17. And then we thought, well, we really need a bass player. And I remember one day I always had a photograph, but Junior Lowe drove up to Bruce's house, which is a long uphill driveway. I think back then it was gravel driveway, and Junior had a bull bass strapped on the top of his car. Just dust just flying. I thought, boy, what a picture, But so he started playing with it. We did some local dances, local high school gigs. And
did you guys play any down here when it was the Armory?
No,
because I've heard a lot of stories that people used to play. For those of you that don't know in podcast land, that the building we're in, we are currently in my studio, Heartel Studios, which is located inside Cypress Moon Studios. It used to be the second location of Muscle Shoals Sound after they moved from 3614 Jackson Highway. But before it was Muscle Shoals Sound, before they moved here in 78, it was the Naval Reserve. And before that, it was the power plant before Wilson Dam was built that supplied power to the area. But I've heard stories about the studios being built on what was the gymnasium floor in the Naval Reserve, and high school dances and just dances and parties and all kinds of stuff. A lot of you guys that ended up, like David Hood and so forth, that ended up being part of a rhythm section and moving forward in the music community in this town, that got a lot of their start playing dances here in this building, which they ended up later on owning, which I find very ironic and interesting.
Yeah,
so that was not a thing.
I don't think I played here. Maybe one time I remember, and I don't know if it was here or the Elks Club in Sheffield, but I remember I had a Wurlitzer electric piano, but I'd only seen one like it. It was like a wooden cabinet living room model that I bought from a lady in Corinth, Mississippi, that worked with the Wurlitzer electric piano factory. I don't know how I heard about it, but I bought it from her, and it's about all one person could handle carrying the weight was. And I remember one night it seemed like Dan Penn dropped me off. It may have been here, and I remember I was like running a couple of minutes delayed, and so I picked that thing up and walked up the stairs and then through the crowd. There was already tuned up, about to play his first song, and I'm walking through the crowd with that big old piano.
Wow.
Set it up, started playing. But,
that's an interesting mental image.
Well, that's another time before cameras, before people had cell phone cameras.
Right. And, that would have been on Facebook,
But, then I played a lot of talent shows as a child. I mean, not a child, but young teenager. And I really got fortunate gig with Hollis Dixon in the Keynotes as a teenager because we had a booking agent, and I think Jimmy Johnson knew this Tommy Couch in Jackson, Mississippi. It was before he had Malico Records, before he had all the publishing and all that. He just had a booking agency, and he booked us all over the Southeast, fraternity parties, occasionally a sorority party. But those were always fun, and Donnie Strigley Jr. told me recently, I'd forgotten that, of course, it was in that band as me, Hollis Dixon, Donnie Fritz was on drums, Donnie Strigley on guitar, Edsel Reichert on bass. And so I think Donnie had a large tube amplifier, and me with my Wurlitzer electric piano would plug into that, set my own volume. I think Donnie played electric guitar. He had his in there, and maybe the bass was in it. Went out. We'd sort of mix ourselves, Found that very interesting because I'd forgotten that part of the deal. So we travel around on the weekend, make a lot of pocket money, and but I think one of my favorite moments in music was first, what I call a first professional gig. John Hawkins, he worked at K's Shoe Store, manager in Florence, Alabama. And he booked a gig for. I asked Roger Hawkins recently, I said, what did we call that band, that young band we had? He said, the Spooners. But the first gig we had was Collinwood School. And what has happened, students, midday, lunchtime or whatever, they have assembly program, and you could pay a quarter if you wanted to go, or you didn't have to go. So that place was packed, and I made $12. I said, this is really living. This is what I'm going to do, you know.
Made $12 for your first gig.
Yeah.
That's not much less than a lot of gigs pay now. More than some.
You know, but that, you know, that was sort of fun because it's me and Roger Hawkins and Bruce and who was the other player? I got a photograph at home, and I made copies, gave to Roger. And
how is Roger doing?
Well, Roger's,
I know he's kind of, his health is kind of.
I haven't seen Roger Hawkins in a while, but I did go by his house a few months ago. He and Brenda, and we had a nice chat, but he just doesn't feel that well all the time, you know, and he doesn't get out very much. But he did tell me once, just said, this is a few months ago, said, you and Dan Penn still writing songs? I said, well, sometime, not very often, though. He lives in Nashville, and he lives in Vernon, Alabama. Split residence, and I live in Roseville, Alabama, so it's quite a distance. But he said, well, if y'all want to get together sometimes and, you know, play a song, demo a song, he said, it took me about 3 months to get a little set of drums downstairs. But I like to play along with y'all. So that told me his heart's still.
Oh man, that's good news. You know? That's good.
But we never have followed.
Yeah, but still, the spirit is there. That's good news.
Yeah. I was glad to hear that from him. You know.
Well, you started on mandolin, right? So you've also played on some sessions for people with mandolin, right? A few here and there.
Very little mandolin playing. That was the first instrument I learned, and then next instrument was a little guitar. But I played guitar on Sweet Inspiration, which was a hit record, but I was 3 girls.
So what was the draw to the keyboards? To the piano and Wurlitzer and organ? And that
day in the hallway at Killen Junior High School.
It just clicked that this is your thing.
Somebody singing and me trying to play the best I could. That moment told me that, well, maybe you can do this, you know, if you practice and pursue it. And,
well, there's a lot you can do with keys, especially now. With all the synthesizer stuff and MIDI and all that stuff you can do. I mean, it's amazing. If you know keys, you can do a lot of things.
Yeah, I never pursued that end of Granda's. I missed a fortune by not doing it, I'm sure, especially when I lived in Los Angeles. But you have people that do that. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Synthesizers and program sounds for each song.
Yeah, I mean, I do some of that here because, like last night, actually, Eddie Martin, you know him, singer-songwriter, great guy, excellent producer in his own right. We were down here doing some pre-production for a record we're going to be doing soon, and I was actually programming a loop for this thing that we're probably going to end up using as the click metronome instead of just a, metronome thing. But, yeah, we were doing that last night.
So far, I just stuck with what little I know on piano and organ. That's about it. I don't try to go any further than that.
Let me ask you this: what is because you definitely have a unique sound that is, well, we need Spooner on this song. You know, it's like you have a thing that I don't know that anybody else does quite like you. It's definitely signature to you, where it's somewhat minimalist, where you don't play more than needs to be played. You have a really good knack for staying out of the way of the vocal and for doing really good signature licks that it seems like everything you play is intentional and has value rather than just like a lot of players. We end up just throwing stuff at it and like, well, we'll remove it later kind of mindset. What are your thoughts on that? I've always been curious to know.
Well, it's, one thing is try to, be authentic and real and genuine and honest with the music. But I think in my case, a lot of it came from just a lot of time spent playing music, either in bands or in studios. In studios, I would listen good. I mean, you're in a studio, recording studio, a good one, like at Fame, first one I was in, they had the huge voice of theater speaker in the control room and all tech. So you do a recording, go back for a playback, and it's like, a microscope blown up, intensified.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did a lot of what I call self-editing. You hear something that don't want to do, it's quite evident. So it's a lot of experience and a lot of time, and also on the piano, for instance, you usually got an electric bass or upright bass player. So I try to stay out of the way of the bass. Nobody ever sits out of the way, but it's my own intention to let the bass do its thing. And that's one of my styles, is that alone. And also, one of the first things to learn is, is just don't play over the vocal most of the time, unless it's needed.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a big blown up microscope. And, if you're kind of in a studio by yourself, not with a group of people, like a lot of times it is, it's somebody will send me some tracks and, hey, can you put this on there? Can you put guitar and keys and bass? And it's kind of a one guy doing it all. And that's fine. That's doable. But there's no substitute for getting in a room with other people. You put personalities and different people have ideas. You put 4 or 5 people in a room together. Somebody's bound to have a good idea. It may not be me most of the time. Somebody's going to have one, and you learn how to play around other people. And my main instrument's guitar, and guitarists, if I'm honest, we're notorious for playing over everything. Everything's one big long solo. It's like, hey, look at me. And I mean, learning how to stay out of the way of everybody and everybody playing their role is something you only see in pros that have done it long enough to realize this is what's needed. This is what I'm doing. The guy over there playing whatever.
True. I think songwriting, the effort is songwriting, the ability to write a song, that's been helpful to me with my playing, I think, because songwriting usually down to 1 or 2 guys. Like Dan Penn, I would be acoustic guitar and a piano or electric piano, and just learning what can sustain a song or the energy or the essence, and then what you can keep and what you can let go. I mean, if other people doing other things, you let them do it. That's the beauty of it.
Well, it's hard to let go of some of those things sometimes, and actually be objective, because it's like, oh, this is a cool thing I did. I want to keep it. But the ability to do that is massive pro level, and the ability to be objective, that's a hard skill to get. It has been for me, because you do something cool and you want to keep it in there, but it may not be right for the song. It's like, hey, I got this cool guitar lick, let's leave that in there. And it's really just screwing the song up, when it would be better just to push mute on me, maybe, It
is a continual lifetime learning experience. Each song is like a whole message, what do you do? How do you do it? And sometimes you just do it, and there it is, It's hard to figure, hard to talk about, I guess.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about songwriting. What was the first song you had cut? Do you remember? Or the first experience that it was like, oh, wow, I'm a songwriter and people are recognizing what I'm doing?
Well, I don't know if I can go back that far, Grant. I don't remember the first song I had recorded, I don't think. But I know the first one. Well, I'll tell a story about the first one that sold some records. Dan Penn and I had written this song called Let's Do It Over. We were both songwriters, signed to Fame Publishing Company for 2 or 3 years. And Joe Simon came into town from Los Angeles, I think. Great singer. I liked one of his early records. He'd already had a hit, I think. But anyway, so he did Let's Do It Over, Dan and I wrote. And I played piano on it, and it's a good recording. And so I'm getting excited because that's going to be the first record, looks like sell some records. And I see it moving up the charts, rhythm and blues charts, pretty fast. And it's on VJ Record Company. And I had noticed VJ Records because a lot of my favorite music was there, like Jerry Butler, and Chicago-based company. And they also released the first Beatles record in the United States on VJ Records. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited. Well, that company's doing good. Well,
that's an honor in and of itself. The
Beatles
got.
I'd go out there in the lobby and read the Billboard magazine, and Let's Do It Over, Joe Simon on VJ Records, climbing the charts, R&B charts. And they'd also have a full-page ad, which are pretty expensive to buy an ad in that magazine back in those days. And it'd have VJ Records. This month, we're number 4 record company in the world. Mm. So all the signs are looking good, that paycheck coming. And then the next month, VJ Records, Let's Do It Over, moving up the chart. And then behind that, the full-page ad, irrelevant to that song, but said, VJ Records, this month we're number 3 record company in the world. And so I'm getting more excited. Someday the check will come, and it's selling records on that label that's doing so well. And the next month they went bankrupt. So that was my introduction to the record business.
So you never get paid?
I got radio airplay money, BMI.
Oh, okay.
I switched to ASCAP few years ago. But
yeah, I'm with ASCAP. What was your reasoning switching to ASCAP? I just went with ASCAP because I knew more people that were with ASCAP at the time when I joined.
I went with BMI because I knew more people that was BMI.
Same thing. Okay.
But yeah. I don't know if I should tell it on the air or not.
Edit.
No, that's okay. I think I should, because Out of Left Field, the song Dan Penn and I wrote, it's a Percy Sledge recording. It did well.
Fantastic song. I love that song.
Thank you. But so it's signed with BMI, and I had moved to Memphis. I was moving to Memphis to work with American Recording Studio and Chip Moman, and Chips asked me to come to Memphis to write with he and Dan, who had already moved there. So okay, and that record, I said. To Chips, no, to Dan, I said, I need to look at my paperwork with Fame, because I don't know. I may have a couple of weeks left on my contract to publishing. I don't know. I can't switch here until
you're just trying to make sure you were on the up and up.
Yeah, because that record was just coming out.
Right.
And it could be that Chips and Press Music might want to publish it.
Gotcha.
So I think Dan told me one night riding the car. A couple of weeks later, he asked me, did I know? I said, I hadn't really looked at the paperwork yet. I'm moving to Memphis. And so what I did was, you have a time limit on when you can turn in the clearance form. And that night at midnight, I turned in the clearance form. Out of Left Field, written by Dan Penn, Spooner Oldham, or Dewey Linden Oldham. Well, and then the first check that came in through BMI was Out of Left Field, Linden Oldham, money. So I ignored it. Okay, that's plugged in the right way. It's going to where it's supposed to go. And a few years later, I realized I wasn't getting paid anything. And so I looked into it. I called Charlie Feldman with BMI, a friend of mine. Said, I'll look into it. Well, he said the lawyers have got it locked up. They won't let me look at it. And I saw a movie called that Paul Newman was in. He's a pool shark, Color of Money. Mm-hmm. That song, Percy Sledge, Out of Left Field, was in that movie. And the credits, big credits at the end of the movie said, Out of Left Field, written by Carl Oldham and Dan Penn. So what it was, that Chips had registered it under Carl Oldham and Dan Penn. So I was supposed to go make an account as Carl Oldham
Oh.
with BMI, and I never did it. So, I
just wires got crossed.
Oh, so it got...
Did all that work out in the end,
No,
though?
it's still in the middle. It's still locked up. Still locked. Well, Charlie Feldman said, what I can do, he sent me $800, said I can't get in there and get the money. They won't let me in there, but...
Man, that sucks.
So he got it straight from that day forward. It's Spooner Oldham, Dan Penn, but the hit money is back there locked up in the safe somewhere.
Dang it.
So I'll deal with that someday. It's just a hard legal battle, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I know.
But that's the way things go sometimes, too. I mean, to make a deal happen sometimes.
Turns out that I was free of my fame contract. That should never have even happened, that where Carl Oldham got in the picture, unknown person.
Wow.
Well,
you worked in Memphis for a while. How long were you doing work up there? You were American and...
Yeah, let me back up a little bit. It's sort of an interesting story. I don't tell much, but okay. Barry Beckett came up from Pensacola, Florida with Papa Don Schroeder, and two soul brothers turned out to be James and Bobby Purify. So he played on I'm Your Puppet, James and Bobby Purify. Barry Beckett played organ, I played piano.
And you and Dan both wrote that song.
Dan Penn and I wrote that song, and so they went back to Pensacola, and a few weeks later, Barry came back up here and said, he and I walked over from Fame Studio. It used to be a little grocery store. It's now CVS Pharmacy, but we went over to get a soda pop. And he said, Spoonie, you think if I move up here, I could get into session work? And Dan Penn, my writing buddy, had already moved to Memphis and was working and writing with Chips Moment at American Studio. It was just opening up, really just being built in an old building. So Edison light bulb went off in my head. I'm sure whatever I'm doing here you can do because I'm moving to Memphis.
Oh, that just all lined up. About what time frame would that have probably been? Or year, I mean?
Maybe I'm guessing 1969.
Yeah, so that was just the stars aligned.
Yeah, so I was waiting because I didn't want to abandon Rick Hall and Fame because it was a situation where it was doing pretty good. But there wasn't a lot of keyboard players knocking on the door wanting my job. It was just that time that I did it all at the time, and so I waited till a replacement came along, which it did. Of course, Barry had a great career. Long story, They bought the other studio, Muscle Shoals Sound Studio. Did good. Well, okay, a question you asked was...
so it was about Memphis. How long were you
I was
in
there
Memphis?
A couple of years at least. Then I got married and moved to Los Angeles.
What were some of the things you worked on with
one
Chips
thing
over at American?
I don't remember all of them, but one thing was Sweet Inspirations.
Oh, really? I didn't
which
realize
I
that was
played guitar on. And
you played guitar on that?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
American Studio in Memphis. And,
cool.
Well, the band, the house band, so I used to working with house bands at Fame. There was a house band, and then going into Memphis, had a studio and a house band, which was Bobby Emmons. He and I played on keyboards on everything, and Reggie Young played guitar on everything. Tommy Cogbill played bass, and Reggie, I met Gene Chrisman on drum. I'm missing somebody. Bass. Mike Lee sometimes played bass also. But what a good band to be a part of, I don't think there's one photograph of that couple of years where I played those guys. I don't think I got one picture of it.
Wow.
Times have changed, But one thing I hear is I just can't help believing B.J. Thomas we did there and the Sweet Inspirations. And seemed like some Mary Lee Rush stuff. Bobby Womack.
Yeah. In what ways were you exclusively with American Studio, or did you do stuff at other places there?
What I did was just did at Fame, exclusive songwriter for Fame, exclusive songwriter for Press Music, which was Chip Moman's company and studio. No, I could do whatever I wanted. I was freelance as far as a player. I could play all over town.
So where else were you playing around?
Nowhere.
You were just loyal to that.
I didn't need to, you know.
Okay, so you were just getting plenty of work and no need to go on.
Enough, you know. And then I was jumping up to Atlantic, New York with Aretha stuff. From there, I think I'd moved there. Yeah, because my house burned, Memphis, and I was in New York. Chip Bowman called me and said, "You might want to come home. Your house is smoking." And
oh, no.
Yeah.
That's a phone call.
Many thanks to legendary songwriter and musician Spooner Oldham for joining us here at Tape Noise Podcasts for this episode of our Muscle Shoals Storyteller series. This has been awesome. Be sure to stick around for part 2 of our interview with Spooner. Also, thanks to each of you who listen to our podcast, especially those of you who give us ratings and reviews. We very much appreciate it. Keep listening. Stay groovy.